Rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. This is our fourth session of Tawheed Halaqah. This is the 7th of October 2024. We are on chapter 4, page 49 on the new format, the new book format. Today we'll go through the Halaqah and we will have a break in about an hour or so where we will discuss, anyone is welcome to stay on to discuss some dawah matters and things. Anyways, chapter 4, Islam is an intellectual creed. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Islam is an intellectual creed from which emanates a complete system, the Deen of Islam. Therefore, it is not just a spiritual belief on which a moral system is based and with which ritual acts of worship are associated. It is not just a religion in the Western sense of the term. Rather, it is a first principle, a belief from which a system is derived. In English, it is called an ideology. Moreover, the Islamic ideology is a rational ideology because it is based on using reason and is built on the principle of sufficient reason. This principle necessitates the presence of an explanation or cause behind the existence of the whole universe. It answers the question, why does the universe exist in the first place? Such a deen would not proceed except and until this fundamental issue is resolved. As will be themed throughout this book, the Islamic ideology is also a spiritual belief, as it is based on having absolute faith and firm belief in the existence of Allah, the Exalted. It is a belief that creation and the prerogative of command are matters that solely belong to Allah. In other words, He created the universe, but neither did He step down, nor did He retire, and high and exalted be Allah above such reprehensible opinions. He gives commands, makes prohibitions, sends messengers, reveals scripture, and enacts laws. This obviously contradicts and totally opposes all materialistic and atheistic creeds. And in Quran, Surah 28, verse 68, your Lord creates what He pleases and chooses those He will. They have no choice, so glory be to Allah, and may He be exalted above the partners they ascribe to Him. Second, follows the necessity of recognizing the connection between man and Allah, acknowledging it, submitting to Him who has made it an obligation, and rendering it the basis for all other relations, systems, and legislation. In this respect, Islam is different and is in stark contrast to all secular, worldly, and liberal sects. The Islamic ideology is also a political ideology, for its system encompasses all laws pertaining to life, including subject-governor relationships, managing public affairs, and the relationship between nations. By way of contrast, materialistic socialism is an ideology. It is an ideology from which a system is derived. According to the aforementioned definition, it is therefore a deen. The basic belief on which socialism is based is materialism, especially dialectical materialism, advanced by the so-called scientific socialists. With all its detailed sects, materialism is not a rational ideology, even if it so claims, for it is based on acknowledging the eternity of matter with its basic properties. That is to say, matter is necessarily existent, eternal, and ancient without the need to provide evidence thereto. The only aim of materialists is to attempt to sow the seeds of skepticism and to challenge the conclusive evidence that prove the existence of Allah. Such an ideology is a priori a materialistic one. It can never be a spiritual one, for it denies the existence of anything other than matter. A fortiori, the existence of Allah. The existence of Allah. Concepts like spirituality, sacredness, etc. have evidently no place in a materialistic ideology. After a long period of gestation and development, liberal democratic capitalism became an ideology. This system is undoubtedly a deen, underpinning its core principles such as representative democracy, the rule of law, the separation of powers, the rights of man, or human rights in modern parlance, etc., lies the core principle of secularism. Although there is variance in the application of this core tenet, it is held as being sacrosanct. It is held as being sacrosanct throughout the West. The ideological roots of this Deen developed over a long period of time and were originally born out of a schism within the Western Church. The Reformation in Europe and the subsequent wars of religion had the effect of fragmenting the religious uniformity of Christendom and ultimately gave rise to this concept of religious pluralism, toleration, and a view that religion should be kept apart from the practical aspects of governance and life. When it first emerged, secularism was merely a compromise, a set of incoherent procedures and agreements to solve the problem of this given conflict. But this was not the characteristic of an ideology as it later became. This was followed by a sustained period where constitutional limits were placed upon monarchs. Man was no longer viewed as merely a subject of the monarch, or for that matter, a pawn of the clergy, but as a citizen with rights that were based upon natural law and reason. Against this backdrop, and subsequently very often through violent revolution, such as in the American colonies and France, philosophers, thinkers, and men of capital sought to redraw the political and economic framework. The existence of God and revealed law lost center stage as the philosophers and thinkers of this new era placed man at the center of the universe. Man alone would decide for himself what system he would choose to live by. Providing the modern state did not encroach upon citizens' cherished freedoms, man could pursue his own path to enlightenment and happiness. Even after this ideology developed, its central core remained irrational. Debate concerning the existence of God and his law became a matter only of personal conscience, not a burning issue that needed to be solved. Since such an ideology does not take the issue of Allah's existence into consideration, it is impossible for it to be a spiritual ideology. Therefore, to reiterate, it is imperative to distinguish between the following: what is and what is not a religious matter, i.e., the general law and its related issues, such as civilization, culture, and special civilization. A Muslim should not take any of these from a non-Muslim at all. It is impermissible to base them on anything other than the revealed text. Worldly affairs, or affairs related to the perceptual world, its properties, laws, urbanization, and methods of regulating all permissible things, such as procedural systems and administrative regulations, all of these matters may be fearlessly and freely adopted and utilized from non-Muslims. The ferocious attack on the Muslim world over the course of the last 300 years, and the fact that most Muslim lands suffered from direct Western colonialism and imperialism, induced reactions of extreme anxiety. The reaction has prevented them from making use of general urbanization, learning science, and acquiring engineering, or adopting administrative systems or procedures. Such reactions and agitations are mostly rooted in a spirit of defeatism that encourages people to assume defensive postures or to think negatively instead of being active and taking the initiative. The feeling of defeat, coupled with an imprisoned ghetto frame of mind, drives many Islamic activists and leaders to take defensive attitudes. They utter meaningless and terrible words that are more or less similar to those uttered by the crazy, deluded, or insane. These factors have also driven others to withdraw, retire from public life, despair of worldly life, and invoke Allah for the quick advent of the awaited Mahdi. To the discerning rational mind, looking into the lives of other nations, learning from their experiences, adopting their developed means and methods are not only logically correct, but a required facet of human progression. It is only logical that a person would make use of the available fruits and results, and then would focus efforts upon creativity in inventing countless matters anew, instead of mere mimicry, for this would only be reinventing the wheel, as the saying goes. However, very often many minds completely overlook this point, coupled with the fact that it is in actuality sanctioned by the legislative text, as the following evidences will show. Imam Malik recorded the following authentic tradition in his Muwatta from Muhammad ibn Abdurrahman ibn Nawfal that he said Urwa ibn al-Zubair narrated to me from Aisha, mother of the believers, that Judama bint Wahab Asadiyah reported to her that she heard the Messenger of Allah, peace and blessings be upon him, say, I intended to prohibit al-Gheelah, but I remembered that the Romans and Persians do that without it causing any injury to their children. Malik said, Al-Gheelah is that a man has intercourse with his wife while she is breastfeeding. Indeed, the isnad for this narration is sahih, as is its textual content. Several other notable hadith collectors cited this in their respective works, such as Imam Muslim in his Sahih, At-Tirmidhi, and Abu Dawood. At this juncture, it is important to stress that we are not about to delve into an extensive discussion of prophetic intentions, i.e., whether those intentions are infallible and in accordance with the truth, or they are according to human nature. It could be an intention for doing something right or for doing something false, in which case Allah would prevent his prophet, peace be upon him, from doing or saying or acknowledging something that arises from such a false intention. Rather than dwell upon the matter, the reader should refer to the research entitled Ham al-Anbiya, Intentions of the Prophets. That work conclusively sets out the evidences to show that the Prophet's concerns are not infallible, and that these intentions cannot be taken as a basis of making a legal argument. It could be an intention for doing something right or doing something false, in which case Allah would prevent his Prophet, peace and blessing be upon him, from doing, saying, or acknowledging something that arises from such a false intention. Allah, the most glorified and most sublime, would prevent the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, in the matter he so wishes. He would either cause to dispel the intention so that the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, would no longer have the will or the determination to carry out the intended deed. He would send down a revelation preventing the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, from carrying it out, or inspire him with an alternate judgment. Allah the Almighty and All-Wise may dissuade him in any other matter he wishes. In the aforementioned incident, Allah the Exalted prevented his Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, from his intended act to prohibit men from having intercourse with their wives who are breastfeeding mothers, for fear that it might do harm to their children. He, most glorified and most sublime, diverted his attention, inspiring him to look into the condition of other peoples and learn from their experience, which situated this particular incident. He saw that whole nations practiced this over long periods of time without any harm being done to their infants. The Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, had only intended by this prohibition to maintain the health of infants and avoid any harm that may be done to them, which is a matter that can be directly conceived by perception and reason. Therefore, it may be possible to look into the experience of other peoples, be they believers or unbelievers, pagans or people of the scripture. Thus, it is even more possible to examine the confirmed and documented findings of scientific and medical research to solve the problem. That was what Allah inspired his Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him. All praise be to Allah. There is no God but him, on whom we depend entirely and whose help we seek. The Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, did not only look into the experiences of other people, but he also guided others to do the same. In other words, he directed them to look into other nations' experiences and confirmed documented findings of scientific and medical results. Imam Muslim records the next tradition in his Sahih, which substantiates this point. Muhammad ibn Abdullah ibn Numair and Zuhair ibn Harb narrated to me, and this is the wording of Ibn Numair. They said, Abdullah ibn Yazid al-Makburi narrated to us, Haywa narrated to us, Ayash ibn Abbas narrated to us that Abu Nadr narrated to him from Amir bin ibn Sa'id that Osama ibn Zayd reported to his father Saad ibn Abi Waqqas that a man came to the Messenger of Allah, peace and blessings be upon him, and said, I do coitus interruptus with my wife. Thereupon Allah's Messenger, peace and blessings be upon him, said, why do you do that? The person said, I fear harm to her children, or to her child or her children. Thereupon the Messenger of Allah, peace and blessings be upon him, said, if that were harmful, it will also harm the Persians and the Romans. Zuhair ibn Harb said in the same transition, if such were the case, this harmed neither the Persians nor the Romans. Similar hadith are also reported in other collections, such as in the Musnad of Ahmad, Muj'am al-Awsat of Imam al-Tabarani, and in the Sunan al-Kubra of Imam Bayhaqi, as well as others. All of these transmissions are authentic and similar to the hadith of Zuhair as reported in Muslim. Given this, emphasis must be placed upon the reported statement of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, in this authentic tradition. If that were harmful, it would also harm the Persians and the Romans. This implies what has been mentioned previously, yet in this situation he was teaching the questioner. Thus, the exhortation of looking into the lives of other people, learning from their experiences, adopting their developed means and methods is not only rationally correct, but it is also Islamically permissible. This has undoubtedly been established. All praises be to Allah, the Lord of the worlds. This was the same attitude adopted by the rightly guided caliphs according to the consensus of all the companions. For example, they adopted the different military tactics and stratagems of their respective age. They also used different methods of irrigation and drainage found in Iraq and benefited from administrative regulations and procedures pertaining to various methods and means. They even did not see any harm in leaving most diwans, official recorders, to use languages other than Arabic. In fact, all diwans were Arabized much later in the Umayyad reign. All this happened with nobody disputing or dissenting and without any discussion of any relevance. At this juncture, a reminder must be made to advise ourselves and all who call to Allah in this last age of ours to rise above such reactionary fervor, as they try to lead man from one false attitude to another, and the latter could be even worse than the former. This was the disaster that befell the Khawarij, a reaction for remissness and negligence, most of which was minor and little of which was major. It then mushroomed into excessiveness and apostasy, which is an utterly devastating and damaging affair. It is much worse than any of the original remissness and negligence. An example of such an obsessive and extremist attitude can be found in what Sheikh Abdul Qadir ibn Abdul Aziz mentioned in his book Al-Jami fi Talab al-Ilm al-Sharif under the title of The Innovation of the Man-Made Constitution. The Sheikh wrote, as mentioned briefly before, man-made constitutions are derived from the bad fruits of evil secularism, which is considered the modern era of Jahiliyyah, ignorance, after the pre-Islamic. The unbelievers have set down such constitutions because they have no sound religion or straight law to which they can refer. They were plagued by the perverted statutes which rabbis and monks altered as they wished and according to clerical synods. This made the unbelievers agree to set down books that fulfill their interest as much as limited human reason can perceive. These books are the constitutions to which they refer as if they were divine scriptures. End of quote. Without question, this is a deplorable statement, and it becomes even more deplorable when made by a man like Sheikh Abdul Qadir ibn Abdul Aziz, who is a good seeker of religious knowledge, whose good intentions, loyalty, and opposition toward tyrannical regimes, leaders of disbelief and misguidance that currently dominate the Muslim world is not doubted. It is even worse when seen in the light of the constitution or charter of the city of Medina. The story of how it was written in its entirety has been proven and is authentic. It is in fact a constitution in the modern sense of the term. It may well in fact be the first constitution, as described thoroughly in our book entitled Obedience to the Rulers, Limits and Restrictions. If this well-known fact, together with the above sets of proofs and discussion, are taken into consideration, this will necessarily result in an important awareness that constitutional documents are good and desirable. They are not bad or evil innovations contrary to Sheikh Abdul Qadir's flawed and obsessed opinion. This previous statement was a reaction to the ferocious attack on Islam. That is why the Sheikh reacted against an extreme with an extreme. But the true Deen of Allah is a middle path between going to extremes and being misguided. Rather than rubbish the matter as an evil innovation, everybody should consider very carefully all the Islamic draft constitution resolutions and draft bills enacted during the past century, then adopt the strongest and most accurately worded amongst them. Complete the missing points and come out with a revised, strengthened draft that can be taken as a constitution and a basis for an Islamic political entity when established, Allah willing. In so doing, it will do no harm to benefit from the jurisprudential and legal formulae of wording used by other people, especially that found in the West, and they have attained a high level of efficiency in this area. By contrast, Islamic jurisprudence has stagnated and deteriorated after having been so vibrant for so long. Jurisprudential and legal formulae did not develop in Islamic law beyond giving judgments. Such jurisprudential rules and studying similar and corresponding issues and the like. On the other hand, Western jurisprudence took great steps towards formulating jurisprudential theories such as tort. All these formulae can form a bulk of means and methods. They have nothing to do with the legislation itself as a referential authority. They are not in any way related to questions like who is the sovereign or who can initiate legislation. Rather, they are related to how a jurist formulates the judgments he deduces. What are the best methods of analysis, composition, and classification and arrangement? Therefore, there is no harm in adopting these methods, regardless of their source, as they can retain their fidelity to Allah's guidance. So this is the end of this chapter. I think it is worth having some comment on it, so that.
Yeah, if any question, is it clear what's going on there?
Sorry.
Assalamu alaikum, Professor. I think it's clear for the example that you gave regarding Gheelah and having intercourse while the wife is breastfeeding. But so you said it's permissible to look at the experience of neighboring nations, such as Persian and Romans, and how they have dealt with similar matters. But so for this example, it seems to be clear. But when we take complicated examples, I'm going to give you one, then it will become a little bit complicated, a little bit messy between
give us an example.
Deen and dunya. For example, slavery.
Give an example.
Yes, so for example, the issue of slavery, like it's not clear for me how to deal with it. Is it a dunya stuff or deen stuff? Especially when we take a look at the neighboring nations, we see that them nations, they banned slavery long time ago for certain reasons. They stated that, you know.
Okay.
So they provide reasoning. So they provide reasoning for that, and not haphazardly banned slavery.
But the point is the following: there are two aspects of that. How slaves are made, how that human being fall in slavery in time past. There were many means of becoming a slave in time past. The main one, which is not under control of the Islamic State or Islamic entity or the Prophet, is that acts of war. In the case of war, women and children are spared from killing but taken into ownership to slavery. And even sometimes prisoners of war themselves are taken to slavery, but usually prisoners for the fighter are either killed or exchanged for other fighters. Okay, that's what is not under control. But there was another source of slavery, that someone is in debt and he cannot pay, he will be sold to pay his debt. Yeah, that's one example. There are other punishment, for example, in the Sharia of Yusuf and his father Yaqub. If someone steals, then the one from whom something was stolen gets as a compensation to enslave the thief. That's the reason Yusuf took his brother into slavery. He asked them, what is the ruling in your deen? And they said, whoever commits a theft, he will be the compensation. He will be sent into slavery for that. And he applied that. He did not apply the ruling of the king, which may be imprisonment or something like that. So that's all these things which are under the control of the Islamic State, which the legislation works, has been abolished. There's no way to get to anyone in slavery because of debt or anything like that. Instead, debt is settled by the rulings of bankruptcy. Yeah, okay. But what's internationally was valid in the world, that's not under the control of Islam. That's an international agreement. The international agreement at the time is that it's perfectly fine to take women and children. Of, for example, you have a war of the tribe, all fighters are exterminated or exchanged for a prisoner or sent away in a faraway domain or something like that as a warrior. The remaining children, women and children are taken into slavery because otherwise they will not survive. That's a substitute for killing. That was the international agreement between nations. That was well established. So Islam did not permit slavery, the external one based on war, or prohibit it. It was there, and he showed how to regulate it. Those taken into slavery have vastly different regulations than actually what they call slavery is really a misnomer. They are taken like in perpetual employment, where the employer, the owner, is actually an employer. He is liable of feeding them, clothing them, and so on. Not only that, they become essentially de facto a member of the family. They become mahram. For example, a woman is owning a slave, or her husband will buy a slave, which is originally must be originated from war, a male one, as a child, for example, give to his wife. His wife doesn't need to cover in front of that one. He's like her son. See the ayah of لا جناح عليهن في آبائهن وأبنائهن etc. وما ملكت أيمانهن.
Yes.
So that's the internal regulation which is under the control of Islam. In addition to encouragement of mukataba and so on. It seems to be, I did not follow that point in fiqh, in Islamic fiqh. There is clearly no evidence from Sunnah, clear evidence, but maybe there's ijma' or it was the common practice is that if two slaves are married, a man and woman, both are slaves, then their children are automatically somehow a slave or something. It seems to be. I'm not sure about that. If it has been prohibited or not prohibited, someone must take that study. That's the only thing which make slavery can continue in the society for certain generations. If that has been prohibited, it maybe has been prohibited, but has been neglected by scholars in any time, especially in Bani Umayyah. Bani Umayyah missed Islamic law completely. For example, Al-Walid ibn Abd was on record saying that all the Berber are his slaves.
Yeah,
for example. So there's plenty of abuse, but let's assume that's the only thing, meaning the only source remaining is war. Now, if it's internationally agreed upon not to take women and children as slaves or sell them, then it is gone. That's it. But this has to be by international agreement. So that's not an issue of ways and procedures. The issue, this is not within the Islamic control. Because Islamic law is given to the people as single persons or communities under their control. What's outside their control, it works according to the well-established international regulations and law. Yeah, number one. And secondly, according to agreement and contracts. You see, you understand what I'm saying? So this is not a matter of dunya or deen. It's a matter of deen. But the deen approved that in international domain, all agreements have to be honored. The well-established agreements with at the time of Islam, for example, that messengers are untouchable. They have immunity. That's well established. السفراء لا تقتل. Okay? And that's agreed by everyone. Any violator will be condemned and possibly will face an act of war from those who he violated their messages, etc. There's this clarified. There's definitely an issue of deen, not an issue of ways and procedure. But,
yes,
but because taking women children for a hostile enemy after the tribe is defeated, possibly all men are exterminated, is a solution which was well established by previous revelation and also by international law, and was enacted. If we will agree in the world after that and enact a law, an international law, which become really binding and international, agreed by everyone, not just some people are bright and some people don't. Like now, most international law is being violated by America. It doesn't have respectability. It's not binding for us until everyone is bound by it. But at least not binding for us to the relation with America. For example, America claims that they don't treat the prisoners of war of Al-Qaeda and so on. They call them non-state combatant. So they apply the issues only for state combatant. That's their definition. Islam regards any combatant as a warrior.
Yes, I understand your argument from the international law.
That's the issue you're addressing. So it's an issue of deen, not an issue of dunya.
Yeah, but then the Western world would argue back that every human being, every individual has a sovereignty and autonomy over himself.
No. That argument is rejected. We agree on that because the Islamic law, the sovereign Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala enacted the law this way, allowing to have international agreement and accept it. That they claim that every human is having a sovereignty, cannot be enslaved. That is their imagination. That's your imagination. It's not our deen. It's not our philosophy. You cannot enforce it on us, and we cannot enforce it on you. But we agree internationally. So internally, you can do in your country whatever you do. We do in our domain whatever we do. It's none of your business.
No, I see. So if it's a Sharia law specified issue, then we have to honor the Sharia law.
Naturally, but this is not a Sharia law. The agreement international was that women and children are spared, and they are to give them a livelihood, because at that time. It may have changed recently, but at that time they would imagine you fight a tribe and all warriors are killed. Okay, because it was permissible to kill all warriors. What happened to the women and children? They would die on starvation.
Yeah.
So what's the solution at that time?
Take them as slaves.
Take care of them. Take members of your family. Essentially, the word slave is the Western way. It's actually not like that.
I see.
That's different. Okay. That's different. Independent of that way, how we treat them internally. The slavery they were in America, for example, Britain, they're called chattel slavery. Treat them like an animal. You can buy it and sell it. You can't kill it. That's not the case. You cannot kill your slave. You will be executed. You cannot castrate it. Who castrates a slave? We castrate him, etc. Although that was violated later, especially by the Uthmani. They castrate so many poor slaves and put them to serve al-haram. Which kind of regime these khilafahs were.
Unfortunately. So, yes. So, Professor, in conclusion, what I understand from this chapter is that we need to look at the issue. Look
the issue of the Gheelah. Analyze it. Analyze the issue of the Gheelah. The Gheelah is that a husband can have his course with his wife at any time. It's permissible. There's no. It's open for him. Okay. But the Prophet felt that maybe. If there's an intercourse during the breastfeeding, she may become pregnant, and then the milk will be cut in the case she becomes pregnant, for example, and that may harm the children. They don't have enough milk. So this idea came in his mind. Allah diverted his attention. Read carefully what he said. Diverted his attention to look at Persian. The Persian do not have an issue with having intercourse with their wives while they are breastfeeding. And we see in masses, in millions of cases, generation after generation, that there's no significant harm is happening to the children because of that.
Yeah, this example is clear, is a clear cut, as they say. So what I understand.
Well, other examples is a clear cut. Like, for example, My answer to Sheikh Abdul Qadir say making the constitution is a bid'ah and so on. No, constitution is the formulation of whatever law and principles you have, but organizes as chapters. And so he thinks the form of a constitution, the form of making laws, he neglected that what the books of fiqh are essentially are also like laws. They are not the divided article 1, article 2, article 3, but for example, Muhalla is divided in Mas'ala 1, Mas'ala 2, Mas'ala 3. You can call it Mas'ala or article. So he shows that he confusing the form with the content and the reference frame of the content.
Yeah, but regarding the madmoon of these cases, the subjects of these cases, these
what is the madmoon mentioned here in the case of the Gheelah? What's the madmoon
of the Gheelah? Yeah, so what I understand from this chapter is that we need to look at each subject by its own.
Naturally.
Yes. So there is
for example, let's give another concrete example. They say the printing press is invented by the kuffar and it will cause this and this and this. Let us look at the nature of the printing press. It makes copying the books easier, more accurate, reduces the number of errors considerably. Yeah, if you compare, for example, a printed book, they still have, especially in earlier time, some errors which need to be corrected in the next edition, or they have an appendix of correction of the print and so on. But it is considerably more, and then it will facilitate producing thousands of copies at a cheap price, isn't it? So it benefits spreading knowledge and making the ummah more educated and more. So what is there to say it is prohibited because made by the kuffar? It is just a mental obsession. That was the main reason. Possibly maybe the motivation of scholars at the time say, if we allow that, then the people will go to the books which are plenty available and we will be ignored as scholars. So we lose our power. Maybe that's their motivation, subconsciously. We lose our power. That will be a very bad motivation because their obligation as scholars who are supposedly to be disclosing what Allah has revealed is to disclose as much as possible. Now the printing press works exactly in that direction. You see my point?
Yeah, so what I'm trying to get here is that there's no general rule of thumb, as they say, regarding how to differentiate between divine laws and worldly laws.
No. There's no worldly laws. There's a procedure because intercourse is permissible with your wife and it's prohibited for non-wife. Finish. That's that. Now the Prophet said maybe intercourse during breastfeeding could harm the children. This idea came in his mind, sparked in his mind because of his concern for the children that they grow up with the best health. Okay,
yeah.
And then he felt maybe we should prohibit this Gheelah, intercourse during. Allah diverted his attention. He did not utter anything. It came said hamamtu. He reporting to us what he felt. Hamamtu bi kada kada. The same happened to the man we asked later. But this is not to the Prophet. And diverted his attention to look, okay, let me see what the Persian and Romans do. They have definitely Gheelah. That's well known. The people know the sexual habits of never. Men are usually very interested in the sexuality of their own nations, tribes, and other tribes. Yeah?
Yes.
So it is clear that it's not there, and it seems to be the majority of Romans, body build and so on, fighting capabilities and capabilities of the industry, professions and so on, similar to the Arabs. There's no significant difference, or those who practice avoid Gheelah and so on. So it is obviously it's not harmful. I learned from that it's not harmful. Look at the experience of the other nation. Is it harmful? Or is it not harmful? Does it cause harm? Does it cause physical, medical harm? That's the point. He would not have thought, he would never have thought that it's in his mind to permit, for example, zina for exception. Like the people of Taif ask him, we travel long distances and so on, very long, and we will be sexually squeezed. And you have prohibited zina. Say it's prohibited until Yawm al-Qiyamah. Period, full stop. Do something else.
I see. Okay.
Starvation, or take your wife with you in the trip and shut up. That's it.
Yeah. Okay. Now
I can see a solution. I'm not going to allow zina for you. That's out of question. Finish over. No discussion. You see issues with mubah and regulating mubah and possibly prohibiting a type of mubah by the certain conditions.
I
and so on.
see. I see. Now I think it's clear. So this rule of thumb applies in the mubah and regulating the mubah, as you said.
Yeah, other things with every situation you can analyze.
Okay, case by case. Like we cannot
naturally. There's no blank thing. The blank thing is that ultimate sovereignty is to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Yes.
And how to get the injunction and so on from Quran and Sunnah. Because of the basic ruling of permissibility and the basic ruling of all means and tools in the universe are permissible, some of them may need to be prohibited for a certain time with a certain condition. For example, you have the right to drive your car in any crossing, but it is clear that in single cases, you will be careful when you come to a crossing, you look right and left before you cross. But in masses, if you are dealing with hundreds and thousands and hundreds and millions of people, you have to put red signal on the crossing and tell the people when it's red, you stop there. Why choose red? Because the convention. It is chosen everywhere in the world. Why choose, for example, flashing blue as stop? No, just comply with what the people have done. So you adopt a red car, right? And flashing yellow, just get ready to go, or flashing yellow and green, get ready to go, and flashing yellow, get ready to stop, and then green to go.
Okay.
That's a regulation. If it is red, if you cross, you get a penalty. Because disobeyed the legitimate ruler who enacted that. Why he did enact that? For the general safety.
Regulating
in principle, you are allowed to go at any light.
Yes. Okay. So this example is regulating mubah, the traffic lights.
Essentially, but independent. Yes. All of that is about mubah because all of this adoption is about mubah. There is no issue of adopting, because having brothels will ease the pressure on people who are having no wife and so on when they're traveling around. No.
Yeah, relieve them. yes.
No, relieve yourself by masturbation. That's an option. Another option, a better option, is that take your wife with you and you travel. If you have more than wives, then Sharia regulate. You cannot choose by desire. Wallah, I take this one because everyone has the right of a night, but you are not in your residence place. So what to do? You make a qur'ah. You take one of them or two of them by qur'ah, not by your desire. Leave it to Allah's decision by qur'ah, by casting lots.
Okay. Now it's clear.
You have these two things. Yeah. You have these things. Not for example, but I think it's a joke that allegedly when she was asked what to do in travel if you are, they say, okay, then you can do it with men. Really, I think this is just a joke. It's just to make people look bad. It's impossible. That's not the way to relief because having intercourse with a male is perfectly prohibited. You like it, you don't like it, that's it. Is it clear now what's going on there? Take what is the issues of which cause harm, medical results from, for example, it's clear now that semen banks, for example, can be managed properly, reducing or making down to zero any possibility of infection, etc., and so on, and it's used effectively and very nicely with animals. You don't need to get a bull from America, for prime bull. You just get the semen, send in a refrigerator proper way, and it works perfectly. Okay? That's the physical reality. Question, can we use it for human? No. Only with the husband who can fertilize his wife. If there's a good reason, for example, he has problem with or she has problem with fallopian fluid, fallopian tube is closed, so we have to take the eggs outside and fertilize in the tube, what they call the tube babies, and re-implanted in the womb. If it is done safely and correctly, the experience of other nations show it can be done safely and correctly. No problem with that. It can be done, but it has to be the legitimate husband, not anybody else. There are no semen banks for humans in Islam. Cannot be allowed, even if it is safe and medically sound. But this can be analyzed every case properly. I discussed the issue of the printing press because the Uthmani fuqaha and so on have absolutely no reason for their prohibition. It's made by the kuffar, it's suspicious. Besides, it's a false argument. If that's their argument, then it's also false, because actually the Gutenberg printing press, which is essentially making page by page, you inscribe things on a page and print the whole page, yeah? That one is essentially, maybe Gutenberg detected independently. It was done in Samarkand by Muslims before him, maybe half a century or a century before him.
Haven't they got it from China?
I don't know from where they got it, but it was there. It was from elsewhere. It was done by Muslims in Samarkand. Originally getting it from China or from the moon is irrelevant. But the fatwa based on that is made by the kuffar, is suspicious and so on. It smells very bad. Shows ignorance of really the difference between civilization, between haram and halal and permissibility. Who said that instead of using a hand to write and copy, using a machine to write and copy should be prohibited? As long as it is done under human control with the verification and checking the writing. The same one, if you have a copyist, you check after him. Unless he has been checked many times and we know he is a first-class copier, we don't check after him. But at the beginning, you check after him. Any new copyist is checked first for accuracy. Otherwise, he's not employed. It's not the same with this machinery. So what was the reason for them to say this is from kuffar, should be prohibited, cannot be imported in the Muslim domain? I am at loss to understand what was their motivation. Is it becoming now clear? Is it, or is there any point dark? Abu Wahab? Abu Wahab?
I think you might have dropped off by mistake.
Okay, no problem.
Okay, okay, good,
No
good.
problem. So that's it. So it is essentially the regulating the mubah and so any other regulation, we look at it as, does it touch issue of halal and haram? Like, for example, let me take the extreme case of artificial insemination. Because no man is allowed to fertilize a woman unless he's in wedlock with her. I say permissible wedlock. Remain then, is the procedure safe? Is it sound? We look at the experience of other people or experience with animals. Because higher animals, mammals, are quite similar in matter of fertilization, purity of the transfer process, control the process, that freezing is not damaging for the semen, so all of that. And the animal produce have shown to be excellent and sound, there's no problem. So from a physical, natural point of view, it is a procedure which is sound medically, so, or can be made as sound as humanly possible. Now the question is that, can we adopt it for animals? Yes, no problem. There is no prohibition animal intercourse. Animals are doing mating in front of us all the time. Just see a herd of sheep and goats, and the buck going around with his sound, and so nobody interfering with that. It's natural. It's nothing prohibited in that. They are not under the law for anything. They are under the rule of instinct. Can we adopt it for humans? Stop now. There's fertilization, there's wedlock, out of wedlock, etc. But if it's a husband and so on, and we can't take the semen for whatever good reason, because obviously no man or woman will come to you and say, we need to do that in that baby tube, unless there is a reason for that. It is not working otherwise. And then the medical doctor analyzes things, because they are in wedlock, it's perfectly fine. Provided the medical aspect and the issues of all other issues have been studied and applied, and experience has shown that it's okay. It doesn't produce more problem than a normal intercourse. In reality, it doesn't do. Okay?
I had a question.
Yeah.
To double check. When I started with the Hizb, the concept of Sunnah, the type of Sunnah, linguistic meaning, and Sunnah as in the Hadith, Sunnah as in Ahkam, and what isn't Sunnah, as in the actions that he had as Wahi is Sunnah, and the different classifications. And although he done it, it was as a human being, his own personal preference. So we've got to look at the text, distinguish this. But I'm seeing that there's quite a lot of similarity with the way this chapter is written about the Prophet's intention. And the other issue that was being discussed is Hadara Madaniyyah, what you can take, what you can't take.
Mhm.
But the wording here is Deen and Dunya. Is it accurate for what I'm saying? Is there a difference?
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. So what Abu Wahab was saying, there's some nuance that, you know.
Doesn't matter, Ibn Halal. We're not going to say Hizb is superior or inferior. If
No,
this idea
I'm just saying.
and can benefit from it, that's not a problem. I said already, these things started by Sheikh Taqi. I polished them and organized it slightly better. And some wording, some nuances and so on.
Okay. So basically, generally, it's going to be in the example, what I've learned is that the mubah, generally it's in the mubah, and the example he gave for slavery, as long as it's internationally done, then we honor it. So it is a matter of deen, but the Sharia has provisions. If there is slavery, then it doesn't outright prohibit it, and that's how we will work on an international level. As
discussed, international agreement, as long as there's not contradiction. For example, any international after Muhammad salam, such things settled until the Qiyamah. International agreement will be the things which were open for international agreement. For example, as he said, that they say it has to be enforced against any country allowing slavery in this domain. No, you cannot enforce it. A country which has an ideology which allows slavery in their domain, let them have it in their domain. But in international interaction, they cannot do that.
Sorry, I didn't understand. Could you repeat that again? Enforcement. So basically, if I'm in the Dawla Islamiyya and the Khilafah, I cannot go to enforce another country which doesn't have slavery. Is that what you're saying, or
no? Anything the international, for example, they cannot come to and say it's not allowed. Absolutely, for example, you cannot prohibit or punish fornication. No, I disagree.
Oh, okay. So if I understood,
that's it. Yeah, that's it.
So from the example, if I understood it, the point that you're making, that if any international law contradicts the Sharia, we do not
the issue with slavery is clear. Slavery was the solution at the time, and Islam came approving it in international transaction because it was a good solution at that time. After that, if humanity come to another agreement, it doesn't mean that the slavery which was in America is approved by Islam and can be implemented in Islamic domain. No, it will not be, should not be have been implemented in Islamic domain. It was not implemented. Even in the West time, when Uthmani was castrating slaves and putting them to save the haram, or they say they have to castrate them, either they may fornicate with a woman, they are committing a crime.
Correct.
Okay, good. So that's what they can do that in their domain. That's not our business. But in the international transaction, as a matter of war, taking women and children as sabi. If there's an international agreement to forego that completely, that's fine. We can enter in that. Actually, we should encourage it. Unfortunately, we did not. We should have done that, right? We should have been leading in that direction, because all Islamic regulations are towards freeing slave and finishing slavery. Otherwise, how come that one of the eighth categories of zakat is freeing slave? And how come that mukataba, if someone asks for mukataba, you are, the stronger point of view enforced by Umar is that you have to accept that.
Yeah, even for kafara. Even for kafara, individual
in the domain, if your slave asks you to free him, I said, and alimtum fihim khayran. Ibn Hazm say khayran is a minimum of Islam. At least I have to be a Muslim. Because if you free any Muslim, what's the purpose of freeing him? And he is in the domain. He is now a citizen.
Correct.
Yeah.
But these are the details of mukataba, but there's an encouragement of the moment a condition is fulfilled, Ibn Hazm says enough to her. And Umar insisted, for example, there was a slave of Anas ibn Malik, and he wanted mukataba. And I said, no, I don't want mukataba. I want to keep you a slave. And he complained to Umar. Umar has beaten Anas ibn Malik and forced him to accept mukataba. So at least the point of view of Umar is that if a slave who is qualified, meaning Muslim, and he's able to earn, is offering to his master, the master must accept. So he interprets فَكَاتِبُهُمْ إِنْ عَلِمْتُمْ فِي خَيْرًا as an obligation. Condition on khayran, and Umar said most likely khayran meaning Islam and capability of doing, of paying off the agreed upon price.
Sheikh, what is mukataba, please?
Mukataba is that your slave tell you, I want to free myself. I will go and work and pay you monthly so and so on, or pay you this amount of money. You agreed that the moment he has finished the payment, he's free.
And does the owner set the price to his own standard?
No, according to the market. What do you mean his own standard? According to agreement. If they cannot agree, according to the madhab of Umar, he can go to the judge, say, he is demanding a price which is exorbitant. He wants just me to prevent me from exercise my right of mukataba. Because the Quran says, وَالَّذِينَ الْكِتَابَ مِمَّا مَلَكَتْ أَيْمَانُكُمْ فَكَاتِبُوهُمْ إِنْ عَلِمْتُمْ فِيهِمْ خَيْرًا. What is the khayran? First of all, basic khayran is Islam. So without Islam, you can say no. Secondly, that he is capable of paying the reasonable price of the market.
Thank you, Sheikh.
Okay? That's the mukataba. But we are not going to the fine point of slavery. We diverted the slavery if it is a big issue. It's made big issue by the West, although they were the most criminal enslavement you could imagine in history. But we are not going into that. And even the freeing of a slave was really a trick of the British Empire, an attempt to undermine America and break their back and cause the civil war there. But we're discussing politics and history, using some liberals and simpletons and making a campaign for slavery. Because the British Empire did not have many slaves in the homeland here. They didn't need them. They need them in the colonies that we using.
And in the factories in the revolutionary era.
Yeah.
So
but in America, the economy of America until the time of freeing the slave was mostly based on agriculture, and slaves are of utmost importance. And that's the reason it led to a civil war. But anyway, we are discussing the philosophy and history. So that's not a issue practice of other nations. This is internationally, the source of slavery in Islam is only the international interaction, is the regulation of war. Regulation of war between nations is a matter of international law. At the moment when Islam came, there was certain international agreement. Islam has approved them because they are there. Nothing can be done about that. But concerning internally, every attempt was made to abolish slavery. That it was not abolished, no wonder. If Shura, which is fundamental for Islamic life and the Islamic ruling, has been abolished by the criminal Muawiyah. You expect anybody to care about slavery? I'm not discussing history. What is the basic ruling of Quran and Sunnah? Good.
Couple of things just to pick it up on. When you mentioned about international affairs, you made a clear distinction that if something is neutral and they want to make it into a thing. So, for example, you can say the Geneva Convention, and everyone agrees on that.
Yeah. For example, Geneva Convention gives certain protection for prisoners of war. Yeah. Which was not in time past. In time past, you can kill the prisoners of war.
Now, so what I want to make the distinction is that if it's something, the brother gave the example of, say, for example, they did something in their own domain.
No, in domain on domain has nothing to do with the international agreement.
Yeah,
that's the reason.
Islam doesn't stipulate that.
That's the reason the resolution. The reason the human rights resolution of that nation is violating of international law itself. It should not be. It should not be regarded as international law and binding for nation, because it is containing a point of view of only one civilization, the Western civilization. We say no. It doesn't belong there. It should not be binding on nations internally.
It's only to do with the collective relationships then.
Only war and peace and collaboration. For example, regulating mail. How to compensate for mail. If you cross the border, obviously you expect the other entity to carry the mail. There's a cost for that. How to settle the accounts. That's interaction between nations. That can be regulated by an international agreement. Okay?
Other couple of questions. In terms of, so on the one hand, you've got the people and adopting laws. How about on the flip side, in terms of restrictions? Often some people...
Give me examples.
Okay, Sadr people using that as an usul. For example, there's a...
No, we'll come to the usul later. Don't worry about that.
Okay,
has nothing to do with the experience of other nations. We're discussing civilization, urbanization, and benefiting from other nation experiences.
How about, for example, here's one, for example, in terms of in capitalist societies when they introduced women entering the workforce, and then it becoming a means to potentially undermine the family, or some people say, or lessen the wage for a male. If this happens and it becomes a thing, would the state intervene? Is there any precedent for the state to intervene in something like that?
What do you mean intervene? This is a woman, and a woman can work or not work according to her choice.
So it'd be prohibited
But
prevent it.
their law is that the woman and husband and wife share the household together 50-50, and they support the household 50-50, or he owns her. In that sense, that's the old law in the West. In Islam, that's not the law. He is fully liable of support. Simple, period, full stop. That cannot be abolished, and should never be abolished, and should not be encouraged.
So this, wherever Hukum Sharia puts a stop,
So it won't happen. It won't happen in Islamic society, in that sense. Still, woman can work for her own account.
and the state would have to.
What does it have to do? Nothing to do there.
Mhm.
Let things regulate them according to the economic situation, and is it big industry, small industry, is agriculture or not agriculture?
Also, this thing we said about, on the other hand, Western Jews formulate jurisprudential theories such as tort. What do you mean by what is that? TORT? What does that mean?
Taught me punishment, penalties, and things like that.
So, I mean, punishments. Okay, now punishments. This would be an area where Hukum Sharia, in terms of stipulating HUD, restrictions on certain types of punishments and limits.
But there are many punishment. For example, many things which touches the public order and so on need to have some kind of punishment. But Islam did not specify anything that. The only specific is that if it's not a had, it's no more than 10 lashes. Okay, more than 10 lashes only in had. So it will be less than 10 lashes. But it could be prison, could be financial penalty, and so on. And from that, you could get from other nation experiences what has been seems to be effectively deterrent. Or maybe just a public denouncement and public scandalization.
Because
Much stronger.
on the flip side, you could say, for example, their so-called human morality and disposing of things like capital punishment or certain what they call
this is chuck it in the
No, but I'm
bin.
saying their preference and their speed to incarcerate people is actually massively detrimental, because you have an entire society.
Independent of that, that's irrelevant. This is in the bin. That is already regulated by Sharia. Game over. Full stop.
But you mentioned taught, and you mentioned learning from other people's societies, and their societies having, for example, imprisonment as being very much
things which the Sharia did not specify had as a substitute.
So a state,
but experience has shown that imprisonment is one of the worst methods. It is not deterrent. It breeds criminals in prison. It makes the prison the school for criminality. They tried to change it in recent time, call it correction and institution. It became worse than that. So you may learn from that and benefit from it and recognize that imprisonment, maybe if something which doesn't have a specified had, maybe 10 lashes, and then public denouncement and scandalization, and making him not eligible for public offices or government employment, so on, for 5-10 years, maybe the best way. Maybe.
I think the U.S. Supreme Court is an entry requirement.
Yeah, that you can see human experience, that various type of deterrence and so on. Okay. That's a possibility. That's the real possibility. But this is fine points. Every point will be discussed from. But the fundamental principle is that it's okay to see the experience of how they regulate mubah, how they regulate natural phenomena like fertilization, insemination, etc. And then see, does it work? Does it fit the system of the universe properly? And then if there's anything prohibiting certain aspects because of certain, like fertilization of human beings, is out of question unless in wedlock. That's it. Simple and straightforward.
Okay.
Yeah.
If anyone's got any further questions, we can proceed to the next chapter. the definition of Islam. This would be a good chapter to finish on, because then they'll become to the meaning of there's no God but Allah. Okay, so chapter.
So is that now clear? What was the meaning here? It's just to confront the obsession or the pretended obsession which led to the prohibition of the printing press, or what Sheikh Abdul Qadir Ablis said that in acting constitution and so on. He thinks that the Islamic State does not need a constitution. It has a constitution. We have the Charter of Medina, but even that, there's agreement between ruler and so on. Initially, as we discussed, I think yesterday in Tafsir, administration was very simple, and the people did not need any written details of the relation between the ruler and the ruled, etc., except just general lines and relying that the Imam will consult sufficiently about enacting laws and regulation and so on. And that's it. And that's what happened, for example, to adopt the issue of having written records, even in Persian, in time of Umar, to keep proper records of who is eligible for zakat, who is not eligible, all these things. And they adopted the system which was used in Yemen, and it was mostly in Persian at the time, which is because available. But it was after discussion. But why discussion? Asking people their point of view and so on. They didn't need a written constitution. Tell Umar, if you enact something like that, or a new administration law and so on, you have to consult with the people, or consult with the Majlis al-Shura. There was no formal Majlis al-Shura in that sense. He get all Badri, all major Sahaba for it's a variable consultative body. Life have become complicated. The Muslim will become very big, millions and tens of millions. You cannot go like that at liberty. Leave it to the ruler to take at liberty. No, it will be elected, and elected even if the ruler is not like them. They'll be elected against his will. That's it. That's the way to go. Because they express the opinion of the Ummah and the authority of the Ummah. He should not be allowed to pick the people he like and ask them for shura, because human beings, what they are. And whatever every human being is, you tend to pick those to advise him who he likes and trust, not whom may be the best one. So another corrective item should be there. That's simple. But it has to, in the constitution, enshrine the details and the election and how much right he has in the election. Does he have a right to dissolve the shura or not? And etc. etc. Depending upon the system adopted, the procedural system. We discussed that in Tafsir. All of that can be adopted. Yesterday, go to the yesterday one. I think yesterday we discussed the issue of limiting the time of the Imam, election of assemblies, all of these things, and the need of writing that, and also vote of confidence and the German bid'ah, which is a very good bid'ah of the so-called constructive vote of no confidence. That's all procedures, and it worked perfectly and showed clearly. Election, for example, if we have, for example, a constituency which elects one person, which system should we choose? Absolute majority. If nobody gets more than half of the valid votes, then the two top one, or whoever remains after people withdraw and so on, will be competing. Or if someone gets from the first round more than half, he is elected. This system is better in expressing really the real majority, but it forces also people to be compromises and make alliances, so that they can get the absolute majority in the first round, at least in the second round. The British system tends to be less representative. Look, for example, now Labour in this election, they have a massive majority in the parliament, but in the votes they have less majority than the one under Jeremy Corbyn, which he did not win. Jeremy Corbyn have percentage-wise more voice, but it's not expressed in the number, because they have so-called simple majority principle. There are 10 candidates, the one who has the number, even if it's not even half or a quarter or a tenth. And obviously, usually he will be close to the half, but not necessary. For example, 4 equally strong candidates, they may get all of them around 25. One is getting 20, 123, 127, 130. The one of 30 goes, representing only 30%. He gets the seat. This forces majority and forces cooperation, and people cooperate and agree. And for example, if there are many candidates, they may say, okay, it seems to be you are the stronger one in this circle according to the general feeling. I will give that place for you, but for you, because he belongs usually to a party, but your party will not put a competitor to me in that other circle. That's a way also of doing compromises, which is not bad. Sometimes it's good to have compromises, because the parliament is not supposed to be going to all the time into ideological major issues. It will be practical issues. usual factors, preferences, which industrialization we should choose, give preference, which kind of agricultural policy we should give impetus, things like that. And these issues should be, people should have a possibility of having compromises.
Well,
So the British system encourages compromises to begin with, but brings less representation of the people in that sense.
certain things are just
Well, the absolute majority system forces absolute majority and forces compromises in a later stage.
some things are just taken as a given, because sometimes some of these problems creep in because people just take it as a given. It wasn't done before. That one example of this is a Khalif being elected for life. There is no example of any time restrictions on of any of the Khulafa Rashideen.
Because what the agreement in the Bay'at was not that we elect you for 4 years. That's it. Because the constitution at the time was simple. No time limitation is invoked. So it's not no time limitation. Finish.
There's no prohibition to put a restriction on time.
Definitely not. That's the point. It can be restricted, son. And
But if you
you
follow
have also evidences, for example, it's not permissible for 3 upward to be on a travel without appointing an Amir over them. Appear for travel. The moment the travel is over, his Imara is finished. Is a time and function and condition and circumstance limited Imara.
Yeah, but that's the nature of a travel. To make a qiyas
Yeah, the same here.
on a state.
That's the nature of the constitution. We limit you for 5 years, and then after that you be eligible for another round based on your performance and so on. This will put them under pressure to perform well and see what the people think and what the public wants.
For us, this is fine because we understand the issue of general permissibility. If people
Yeah, that's it. That's the general permissibility. Contracts and condition, unless the Sharia prohibits a certain condition, definitely. But the conditions are all open unless there is a Sharia. For example, I give you 1,000, you give me at the end of the year 1,100. That's prohibited. This is riba. Because of that, not because you don't have the right of contractual. It's a contract like anybody, but that special contract is prohibited by Islam.
That's clear. Alhamdulillah.
It's just analyzing a little bit deeper than the shallow understanding. It was like that, it must be like that. Even the act of Prophet are not for obligation. We'll discuss that in the usul. It's just for, he is uswa hasana, so for desirability. But it's not obliged to do the same acts he did. No. Unless there is an evidence that this specific way of action is obligatory. You need a supportive evidence to that. The mere act is not producing obligation. You see, there's a fundamental problem with the usul with these people. Good.
Yes,
I thought this is a trivial point. It turns out to be a major point.
No, but we have new people here, so they're not familiar with some of the points about these restrictions.
We'll get to that inshallah about the basic ruling permissibility. But it seemed to be there's some faulty usul. Now, not only these people in the Muslim world, there seem to be that the Prophet did this and this way, so it is obligatory to do this way. No, it's not obligatory.
Yeah, that's endemic, especially with the Salafi understanding. This and they're growing, so
yeah,
that's a given. It's 18 minutes past 10. I can continue, or if you want to go to the meeting, it's up to
how many? 18 minutes past 10.
18 minutes past 10.
What is the next section? How long it is?
It's 4 pages, and it's the definition of Islam.
Yeah, let's go with that.
Okay,
yeah,
Charles.
That's just the definition.
Okay.
Definition between Islam and al-Islam and so on. Maybe that's yes.
No problem, Charles. So this is page 58, chapter 5, the definition of Islam. A deed is the deen that has been revealed and sent down from Allah, the one and only deity, the exalted and majestic, upon the final and Prophet and Messenger Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. It is the last and final deen which places a seal upon everything prior to it. All that was revealed prior to this deen is completely abrogated by the advent of this message. The present.
So this is the definition of al-Islam, the Islam, not Islam. Okay, carry on.
The present Deen is the sole determiner of what is considered right and wrong. Nothing will therefore be accepted by Allah unless it is in accordance with its precepts, and one cannot attain salvation in the afterlife by other than it. The foundation of Islam, its fundamental principles, and its solid constituents are based upon the testimony that there is no God or deity except Allah, and that Muhammad ﷺ is the messenger of Allah. Within the language, the word al-Islam means complete and total submission. This is the very essence of al-Islam, namely obedience to Allah in total and absolute submission and surrender, based upon the firm acknowledgement of his prerogative of command, al-Hakimiyyah, to his final supreme sovereignty. In truth, by his very essence, he has the ultimate and absolute right for ordering and forbidding, for declaring matters as being obliged or prohibited, unconditionally, albeit on the proviso against what he has obliged upon himself or forbidden from himself. That is because he is Allah, and there is without doubt no other God, deity. He is the only, the everlasting, the self-subsisting originator of the heavens and the earth, Lord of all creation. He does as he wills, having mastery over everything. He creates as he wills and chooses, and his knowledge encompasses all. There has to be belief in all others considered as lords, rivals, and there has to be disbelief in all others considered as lords, rivals, oppressors, and everything of that type. Allah, the Exalted and the Majestic, has said.
Not to the point. There's a disbelief and the rejection for the others. Not only just that they are not deity, we reject them. We deny that they exist, or if they exist as people who claim sovereignty, like the King of England having half sovereignty, or the people of England having sovereignty. We don't acknowledge that, and we reject that, and we disbelieve in that. Yeah. Yeah. Kufr al-Taghut is essential. Yeah.
Allah the Exalted and Majestic has said, if anyone seeks a religion other than Islam, it will not be accepted from him. He will be one of the losers in the hereafter. That is Surah Al-Imran, 3rd Surah, 85. Next ayah. True religion in Allah's eyes is Islam. Those who are given the scripture disagreed out of rivalry only after they had been given knowledge. If anyone denies Allah's revelations, Allah is swift to take account. Surah 3:19. O you who believe, be mindful of Allah as is his due, and make sure you devote yourself to your dying moment. Surah 3:102. If they argue with you, Prophet, say, I have devoted myself to Allah alone, and so have my followers. Ask those who are given the scripture as well as those without one. Do you too devote yourselves to him alone? If they do, they will be guided. But if they turn away, your only duty is to convey the message. Allah is aware of his servants. That's 3:20. Turn to your Lord, submit to him before the punishment overtakes you and you can no longer be helped. That's 39, verse 54. Next one is Surah 5, verse 3. You are forbidden to eat carrion, blood, pig's meat, and any animal over which any name other than Allah's has been invoked. Any animal strangled or a victim of a violent blow or a fall or gored or savaged by a beast of prey, unless you still slaughter it in the correct manner, or anything sacrificed on idolatrous altars. You are also forbidden to allot shares of meat by drawing marked arrows, a heinous practice. Today the disbelievers have lost all hope that you will give up your religion. Do not fear them, fear me. Today I have perfected your religion for you and completed my blessings upon you and chosen as your religion Islam. But if any of you is forced by hunger to eat forbidden food with no intention of doing wrong, then Allah is most forgiving and merciful. The words Islam and Muslimin have been used in relation to the previous religions, an example of which can be found in the following verse in relation to the Torah, where the Exalted has expressed the following. This is in the 5th Surah, verse 44. We revealed the Torah with guidance and light, and the prophets who had submitted to Allah judged according to it for the Jews. So did the rabbis and the scholars in accordance with what part of Allah's scripture which they were entrusted to preserve, and to which they were witnesses. So rabbis and scholars, do not fear people, fear me. Do not barter away my messages for a small price. Those who do not judge according to what Allah has sent down are the disbelievers. Next ayah is 132. That's Baqarah 132. And Abraham commanded his sons to do the same, as did Jacob. My sons, Allah has chosen your religion for you, so make sure you devote yourselves to him to your dying moment. And this next ayah is 383. Do they seek anything other than submission to Allah? Everyone in the heavens and earth submits to him, willingly or unwillingly. They will all be returned to him. From these verses, it can reasonably be established that the intended sense of Islam and Muslim is the original linguistic one, which is submission and surrender. Moreover, it is the complete submission to Allah alone, total submissiveness, surrender and subjection towards him. It is based on the acknowledgement of Allah's firmly established Hakimiyyah, the final supreme authority. Only he, in truth, is the ultimate determiner of what is to be commanded or prohibited. Only he has the prerogative of command absolutely without condition or qualification. That is, except where he has placed a restriction or condition upon himself, not to enact or undertake something. He is Allah, there is no God or deity except him. He is the one and only Al-Hayy, the ever-living, the Al-Qayyum, the self-existing originator of the heavens and the earth, Lord of all creation. He acts as he wills and holds dominion over everything. He creates whatever he wishes according to his choice, and his knowledge encompasses all. With regards to any tyrants, partners or rivals that are set up either beside or in tandem with him, there is total disbelief and disavowal in all of them.
Rejection and disobedience, yeah.
All the previous prophets and those who believed in them and followed them were upon that which is good in guidance, and therefore they were upon Islam in a general sense. But this isn't the Islam in a specific sense. In other words, that as we specifically know it, the complete Deen with its detailed Sharia and doctrines as has been revealed upon the seal of the prophets, Muhammad ibn Abdullah, peace and blessing be upon him.
So we could say, just as a slogan, all prophets were on Islam, but we are on Al-Islam. This is the final one, the specific one, the one brought by Muhammad. It's including his Sharia and so on. But all others are on a certain Islam, surrender and submission, recognize the absolute sovereignty of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. No prophet and messenger before had accepted out this. What are the details, Sharia, what is it? That's fine. It can be whatever it is. It's irrelevant for anymore because the final Sharia has abrogated that. So this is just history. It's history of revelation and salvation and history of human development. Well, we can speculate about that, why it was like that in time past. Was humanity not mature enough? What's it? It's all irrelevant. It is good for philosophical study, historic study, and maybe psychological study, but the reality is that that final one is the final one. That's it.
This distinction and your use of Al-Islam to define it, is this textual or conceptual?
No, it's conceptual. It's very conceptual. Al-Islam, the Islam, when you say the Islam, meaning the religion of Muhammad. Islam is surrender to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who is the religion of all prophets, the essence of the religion of all prophets. It's just a matter of the and the. Yeah.
Okay, just wondering, because obviously to make that statement.
So when we say the previous prophets were on Islam, were Muslim, yes, surrender to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Were they having 5 prayer a day? No, not necessary. Did they have a fasting of a month, or maybe fasting from dawn to breaker? No, maybe their fasting was from fish and so on. Like allegedly, the Christian claim that they're fasting. Allah, if that's the when Aqeedah by Isa or their own invention, but that's another fasting. It's a fasting, etc. They have also fasting from talking. We don't have an Islam fasting from talking. That has been abolished by Islam. No fasting by talking.
Given that he is okay, the final paragraph. Given that he is the final prophet, the seal of prophethood, there is no Islam in its general sense anymore. Rather, there is only the Islam as set out and revealed to him, and thereunto us.
Yeah. So if someone says, "Oh, Musa was in Islam. I am on the religion of Musa." Yes, but religion of Musa, if you are submitted to Allah, Musa was submitted to Allah Ta'ala. This final messenger If you know that he's a final messenger, then you are ordering to submit to Allah by obeying him. And he abrogated the Sharia of Musa. Ma'as-salam, bye-bye. So you cannot stay on the Sharia of Musa. It has been abrogated. You are not submitting to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala now. You are rebelling by insisting to follow Musa and not follow Muhammad. So you're no more, you are actually no more on the moment Muhammad has come and you saw the evidence and then you have no other choice if you really was a Muslim under the religion of Musa except to accept that. If you don't accept it, you have departed even the religion of Musa. You are not in surrender anymore. And if Musa would have been alive, he would follow Muhammad like in the Hadith, which will come in the usul later. Good? Okay. Carry on.
That's that chapter finished now.
Okay. So
Okay.
should we do this da'wah,
Sure.
monthly da'wah section? Or
Sure. First things first. Anyone got any questions on what's been said so far?
what's the next chapter? What's the next chapter? What's it?
Next chapter is the meaning of there is no God but Allah, except Allah.
Okay. Leave it for next time then, because we may need to discuss a few things there. Okay.
So this
Inshallah.
page 62. Do tell other people, inshallah. If anyone has any questions on what's been said so far.
Yeah.
Anyone? Okay.
Most of these things, except the issue, which I was amazed about the issue of learning from other nations, issues of mubah and regulation, and issues of technology and so on, and the example of Gheelah, etc. So on. I just was wondering. I thought this is quite trivial, but it seems to be it needs. It's good that we discussed that to clarify that in the mind. Keep the example of the printing press and the example of adopting the records in Persian by Umar. It's completely contradictory. Umar adopted the records even in Persian because the scribes who work in that and skilled in it were doing it, although they are Arab from Yemen, but they were doing it in Persian. So keep it Persian. The job has to be done. Records has to be made. Eligible people have to be known. You have to write it down. And the people are skilled to do it in Persian with the technicalities, the columns, one column here, one for him, against him, etc. I don't know how they were keeping records, but that's why. Just adopt it. Move on. Don't get stuck into trivialities. Not like in later than when the printing press came, which was a revolution, really, which will fulfill that what Allah took the covenant from the scholars, that they expose it to the people and don't cover it up. They decide to cover it up because if you compare the printing press, how many copies can be made and how cheap it is with writing with the hand, you will see immediately. If you insist on writing with the hand only and verifying it by a scholar, you are covering it up essentially. Or maybe the intention was not that, but if it's the intention, it's a catastrophe. It's a major calamity. And it turns out to be a calamity in Islamic history. 3 centuries long. We did not have printing press, which could have turned the people from like 2-3% illiteracy into maybe at least 15-20% literacy. It's a real catastrophe. It's such a point which should have been trivial. Good?
Okay. All right.